Hey everybody, welcome to an episode 108. How did that happen? Dan Schinder here with
Steven Schinder.
And our guest that we are so honored to have with us, David Cousins from the Strawbs, 108, and they've been around like 108 years, right, David?
I feel like it.
We're really happy you made time to join us, especially on a Saturday. So much to talk about. I'm in Globe, Arizona, 100 miles east of Phoenix. David is in the UK, and Steven's in Downey, the Los Angeles area. Chime in, folks. Tell us where you're watching from. Let us know if you have questions for David. We'll relay those. And Steven, why don't you kick it off?
Yeah, so, Strawbs has had such a huge history, and going through the Strawbs discography, it really feels like the band's sound was able to evolve so that it could adapt even into the 21st century. What would you say the key was to all of this, Dave?
Yeah, and was it real conscious?
I can tell, no, it was never conscious. Nothing has ever been thought about in terms of the way in which the band has developed. I'll tell you exactly what the consistency of it is the songs. It's the songs that carry the whole band through. It doesn't matter who's playing them. It's the songs that are the consistent sound of the Strawbs.
Awesome. Yeah, being around for so long, the question I'm going to ask, I know there's so many obvious answers, and if you use one of those, that's fine too, but whether it's regarding to staging or how one tours or studio gear, the recording process, money, downloads, the digital age, what are a couple of the biggest changes in the music business that you have found most challenging to adapt to, but yet, of course, you've overcome, or you guys wouldn't have had so much success for so many years? But what are a couple of the biggest things that were most challenging to adapt to?
Well, other than going back right to the very early days of recorded sound on cylinders, we've actually been through the whole lot.
The wax.
Yes, I know, but we've near enough. And actually, my dad had a collection of them, which I threw away when I was a kid. I thought, oh, what are these things? But anyway, that's not the point. Is that we've been through the lot. Our first records came out on vinyl, on 45s. We were lucky with that. We didn't actually have 78s, but they came out on 45s, and we'd been through vinyl. We've been through CDs. Now we're into downloading and streaming, and we've seen the whole thing evolving in the whole of our recorded career. And sometimes it's been exciting, sometimes it's been very frustrating. And it's a curious mix of the two at the moment. It's exciting to put a new record out, but it's frustrating that people don't do it in the same way they used to, going into a record shop. We've seen the whole total demise of the record shops. Tower Records I used to love going into. Yeah. Shops like that were just a dream come true, but they don't exist anymore. Yes, there are a few HMV stores in the UK, but by and large, the record shops are non-existent.
They're like a novelty now.
Yeah, but I used to go and order a 78 record of Leadbelly, and cycle to the record shop and bring it back on my bike. It was but the Backwater Blues I ordered on 78, and it got cracked on the way home, and I was broken-hearted. But I still played it, and it went, got the Backwater Blue. So I still played that thing over and over and over again. But it is frustrating in a way, but it's still exciting putting a new album out.
Yeah, I think that one of the biggest things in regard to that change over the years is when vinyl basically went away for a long time, because it was still around when we had 8 tracks and we had cassettes. But when vinyl kind of went away and was replaced with the CD, it really changed the, no pun intended, the landscape of the artwork and liner notes of album covers. And I'm very tactile when it comes to that. And I love the bigger canvas, if you will, that albums have. And you've got yours in vinyl, your own record.
I entirely agree with you.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful cover.
It's a lovely thing to be able to pick up and hold. But I tell you what, when CDs came in, it was the end of planning music, because one of the great skills, I believe, is planning this running order of a vinyl album. And people don't realize how vinyl albums sound, where the sound comes from for a start,
Right.
unless you're actually in the industry. And also, they don't think about the key changes or the tempo of the songs. They just sort of put the record on and listen to it. Now, when I make a record, you're bound, first of all, by 20 minutes a side. That is the best length for a side of a vinyl album. So that's why our album is always planned to the vinyl and to 20 minutes a side. Now, what people don't realize is that the needle is going up and down and from side to side. The treble, it comes from the needle going up and down, and the bass comes from the needle swinging from side to side. Now, the closer you get into the grooves in the center of an album, the grooves can become closer together, and therefore you can't get as much bass on a track in the middle of the album. And therefore, you have to take all of that into consideration as to what should be the tracks in towards the center of the album, so that when you turn the album over, you've got more bass coming on for your very first song, for the next song, for the second side. So all of that is taken into consideration, which people don't realize.
When you plan the order of the songs.
Yeah. Now, when CDs came in, people said, we've been cheated. We've only got 40 minutes on a CD, and they can put 75 minutes on a CD. Well, people started putting 75 minutes on a CD, but frankly, they should have stuck to 40, because it's very easy not easy to make a 40-minute album, but with a 40-minute album, you can make a really powerful statement. But when you start adding all the bonus tracks and everything else towards the end of a CD, it waters down the value of the music.
Yes, I agree. Those should be a separate release, in my opinion. I don't know if Steve agrees, but the other thing you lose, I don't know if you lose it, but it's different that on vinyl, literally, other than sonically, like you just talked about, David, the fact that side one has a personality unto itself and side two has its own personality, as opposed to just a continuous play, which I wonder how many things have come out only on CD first that would have been in a different order if it was a side one, side two sort of format.
I've no idea, but then people who go on and make a 70-minute album, they wouldn't, as I say, they could cram it, a big chunk of it onto the vinyl album, but it wouldn't sound very good.
Right.
But I entirely agree with you. And what we have done is, with the CD, it does have two different tracks on the CD. They're not bonus tracks. They are part of the album. But in a funny way, listening to our new album, the magic of it all, is that it sounds like two different records. When you play the vinyl album, it finishes with on a very melancholy track called Wiser Now. And it leaves the audience going, oh, it's a very sad, reflective. So it's not sad, it's a reflective song. But when on the CD version, after that, comes a very lively song called The Lady of the Night, which is very chirpy and cheerful. And the whole CD goes out on feeling very good and very lively, because it's then got a Christmas song on the very end of it. And so it's like listening to two different albums.
That's interesting.
One goes out with a melancholy feel, the other one goes out with a very hopeful feel.
Interesting. And I do have one more question about that format. And that is, when you personally listen to the CD version versus the vinyl version, how sonically different are they? Or did you consciously spend a lot of time to master it and mix it in a way where the warmth of the analog of the vinyl wasn't too far different from what we get with digital on a CD? Or do they sound very different?
They sound very different. I didn't get involved in that. Blue Weaver, our producer, who is with the band, he is in charge of all that sort of thing.
Okay.
And he mastered it differently for the vinyl album. In fact, you have to cut down the sonic principles, levels of the master tape. And you have to the audio engineers, because if the tape's too hot with level, then the vinyl won't cut properly. If the bass is too heavy, that needle swings across and clips into the next track. I've seen that. I've watched it when I've been to mastering sessions when they've actually cut the album. They explain to you how that, oh, that's bouncing onto that track, so we can't do that. We'll have to reduce the bass there and cut it back. But then so they are mastered in two different variants. They're very different.
Interesting. Thanks. Steve?
Yeah, so getting into the new album, just going a bit back for context for all this, the Strawbs albums Grave New World and Bursting at the Seams back in the early 70s were huge, and it makes sense that certain songs from those albums could resonate with people in South Africa resisting against resettlement at the time. We understand that this is a reason for the upcoming documentary, which has the same title as the album, The Magic of It All. So this might sound like a bit of a silly question, but which idea came first, the documentary or the album? What was the order of events there?
What came first was the fact that my partner's son lives in South Africa. So she said, I want to go and see Richard and his family. Pardon me. They live in what was first called Port Elizabeth, but now it's called Keberki. And she said, I want to go. Do you want to come with me? And I said, sure, yeah, we'll go over. But I said, it's very expensive to go. I wonder if I can get some shows to help pay for the airfare. So I called up a DJ that I've been in touch with and said, can you fix me in with some shows? And within a week, he came back with 4 shows.
Wow.
I had no idea, but we only had 6 weeks to go before we were due to fly. So it was very short notice for these venues to put me on as a solo show. Then he came back and said, I've got South Africa's best bass player would like to play with you. Would you feel, is that all right? So I did a list of the songs I intended to do, sent them over, and I got there, and Skulk Joubert is his name, and he'd learned all of the songs. He knew every song. And we'd spent an hour and a half going through them on the first show, and off we went. And the 4 shows were very successful. The last show, I was very surprised, we drew 400 people in Stellenbosch, which is just an hour outside Cape Town. I talked to a lot of people after the show, and they said, you have no idea how popular Strawbs were in the 1970s.
Oh, wow.
People identified with you because of apartheid and the anti-apartheid movement, particularly the album Great New World and Bursting at the Seams. Part of the Union became one of the rallying songs because there was a union, I can't remember what it was called now, the anti-apartheid union, as they called it. Oh, that's a bad, it wasn't that, but it's in that line.
Yeah.
And so that song became hugely popular. But we knew that we'd sold records because A&M Records used to say, you're selling a lot of records in South Africa, but that was all we ever heard.
Oh, wow. So you didn't know all those years?
No, we could never go to South Africa because UK musicians were banned from traveling there to play. So we couldn't go. So when I went over there, they were very excited about it. And the documentary maker came up and said, look, I want to make a documentary about the history of the band and its influence on music around the world. Not that we've been a massive band in terms of massive record sales like Michael Jackson or the Bee Gees or all of these acts. We were in a different league to that. But again, I think that's because of the nature of the songs as well. But anyway, he said, I would like to make a documentary about the influence the band has had, and how would you feel about recording in South Africa with South African musicians? And I said, well, sounds very, very exciting. And so then Skulk Joubert came back and said, look, I've got the best guitar player and the best drummer in South Africa, all ready to go. Are you ready to go? And I said, well, hang on, how much is this going to cost? Because I've got a budget to make an album. And so he said, oh, well, we'll have to find some sponsors for it. I said, I'll tell you what, and this is me being very honest, I said, I'll put £5,000 down to pay for the studio, to help pay for the studio time and to musicians. And he said, well, I'll go and match that. And he went out and found sponsors over there to match that money. And so that was how it came about.
Oh,
And
wow.
so it was all done in that way. I then called up Blue Weave and said, how do you fancy going to South Africa? He'd been there before. He said, it's a wonderful idea. I love the idea. I called up John Ford and said, do you fancy it? He looked it up on the airlines and found out it was an 18-hour journey. And he said, I'm not sure I can make an 18-hour journey at the moment. So he said, but I'll certainly contribute. I'd love to join in the project. And so then I had 3 people joining in with it and a studio to make the album in with South African musicians and ancillary musicians who came in towards the end, the singers and the sax player, Byron Abrahams. Oh, my gosh. But anyway, in came these other musicians, and it was like feeling an atmosphere in the studio was just electric, and it was a wonderful, wonderful, uplifting experience.
Wow. Could you have ever imagined that back in the day when you were putting such influential material together that really affected that region of the world? Did you ever imagine that so many decades forward, you'd find out how popular you were and then get to play there?
No, never. It's still difficult to comprehend. It really
Interesting.
is. But the interesting thing was that the studio is in the Academy of Sound Engineering in Cape Town, and it is a working college. So at the time, during the day, the students on the course who were there on the course, the engineering course, sound engineering course, were sitting in the studio watching us record, and also helping out as part of their learning schedule how to rig up a mic for live recording, how to rig up a drum kit, how to rig up the guitar, where to put the guitar amp so it doesn't spill into the studio, put it in a corridor outside. They were learning all this. And at the same time, when we had a break at lunchtime, we'd all go out and have lunch together, not lunch together, we'd send out for McDonald's and fries. But we'd all sit around together and they'd tell us what music they were listening to, and they were asking questions and we were asking questions of them. So it was a lovely learning process that was going on at the same time. And to make it better, all of this was being filmed for the documentary.
That's great.
Everything that we put down in the studio with me strumming the guitar, making mistakes, going back and saying, can we do that again? Can we change this? How about if we do that? All of that is footage for the documentary.
When does this come out, David?
Well, the next step of it is that we're doing a big festival in 3 weeks' time, the Cropredy Festival in England, which there'll be 25,000 people there. And the 3 South African musicians are flying over for it to come on stage with me. And it's Strawbs past and present. All of that is being filmed for the documentary as well.
Wow, that's great.
And we're filming and recording the whole show. And that will then all be put together into the footage of the documentary, which we hope to get out towards the end of the year.
That's great. We're very excited about that. We love documentaries, both of us. Another thing. Oh, go ahead, Steve.
Oh, I was just gonna add that documentaries about bands, it's very easy to make it solely about the history of the band, and those are great. In fact, one of those, the Yes Years documentary, was very much my gateway into becoming a fan of them. But to have a documentary like this one for Strawbs, where it has a focus on the influence on that region, and you also get to put in bits of recording the album and the upcoming
Festival
farewell gig. It's just such a neat package and
very
really
well-rounded.
Encapsulates it very well.
I think it's going to be a lovely thing to watch. It'll probably be quite emotional, I should think, because it's going to be my last show, and I'll explain why. Is that I have got a condition. I was diagnosed in January with a condition called MDS, M for mother, D for dog, S for sugar is how I say it. And it is a form of blood cancer, and it's incurable. And it means that my immune system is very severely diminished. It means that I can't go out to mix in crowded spaces in case I pick up an infection. Because if I pick up an infection, I have to go straight to hospital. And so it's a very difficult thing to live with. The whole thing's got to be managed very carefully. The performance on stage, I advised the organisers of the festival that I cannot go to a meet and greet after the show. There's no way I can do that, because somebody might sneeze in my face and they'll end up in hospital. And so that's not feasible.
Yeah.
So they understand all of that. I've had to go out and buy my own microphone so that I don't pick up infection from somebody who's been using it before me.
Yeah.
These things have had to be taken into account. And I talked to my consultant about it, medical consultant, before taking the decision, can I do this festival? He said, it's in the open air, but for heaven's sake, he said, just do not get into crowded spaces. So he said, please beware of that. So he said, but I want you to live a normal life. And so it's not as though I'm crying in my soup and saying, oh God, that's the end of it all. No, he said, I want you to lead a normal life. He said, if you go to the pub, he said, don't go on a Saturday night when it's rammed. He said, go on Saturday lunchtime and sit in the garden and have a drink, have a beer or something like that. He said, that's fine. He said, if you go to a restaurant, don't go on a Friday night when it's absolutely packed out.
Right.
Go at lunchtime and have a nice meal. He said, but just be very careful. And so that's how I have to live my life now.
Well, thanks for sharing that. We will talk about the new album in a moment. I have another historically related question, and that is that over the years, you've worked with 3 Wakemans, Rick, Oliver.
I call them the Wakemen.
There you go. Yeah. Rick, Oliver, and Adam. What were some of the differences, if any, between working with them, and were they always telling on each other in the later years with the younger gents?
No, they don't. They're all good friends, if you know what I mean. You know, Dad loves his kids, and they love him. And Adam was doing a show with his dad at Wigmore Hall in central London on Friday night. So they get together, and I won't spoil it, but Adam's going to be featuring with us sometime soon.
Oh, nice.
But, so we're all in contact with one another. But Oliver is the eldest son, and he sounds more like his dad playing. He's as fast as his dad, and he's the one who left us, just like his bloody father left us to join Yes. Left the Strawbs to join Yes. So I've got that as another unique point.
That's funny.
Two of the Wakemen left us to join Yes. Adam actually went and was going to join Yes, and he went and rehearsed with them, and then the Russian keyboard player came back, and so he didn't actually get to play with Yes, although he learned up the songs. But that's a little bit of a secret you'll have to ask him about.
Yeah, because of the visa problems Igor was having. I remember reading about that. Yeah,
but anyway, they're all. Adam is the practical joker. Practical joker. You know, every time you touch his hand, you wonder what's going to go off in your hand. It's never vindictive. It's always hilariously funny. Rick is the great raconteur, wonderful player. I always tell Rick, your piano playing better than your synthesizer playing. He says, no, it's not. And so I know how to wind him up, but I don't wind him up. And Oliver is a wonderful, wonderful player, and he played with us and made a lovely album. And it was just great fun to do. But he had exactly the same, not intentional, the same mannerisms in the studio as his dad.
Oh, wow.
He had to roll his sleeves up, clear the studio, clear the air, shake his shoulders, wave to limber up. Okay, play the track. Bang! And then he was off. But it was exactly the same mannerisms. It was uncanny.
That's interesting.
They're all lovely people. And as I say, I'm very proud to be the fact that I'm the only band leader ever to have had all 3 Wakemen in the band.
That's
Yeah.
nice. Yeah, we've had Oliver on the show a couple times. Very delightful. We're looking to have Adam and Rick as well, but that's great that you got to work with all three of them.
Oh,
What a
yeah.
what a neat point of trivia.
Yeah, and you and Rick also worked on the Hummingbird album
Oh yeah.
about 20 years or so
Yeah.
ago. It's such a beautiful album. Can you tell us a little bit about what that album was like, the process of making it?
Well, Rick, I moved from Devon in the West Country up to Chiswick in West London, and quite out of the blue, Rick, I found, was living about 5 miles from me.
Mm.
So we went out to lunch, and who should turn up but Pete Townsend? Who Rick and I sitting there for lunch, and Pete Townsend walked in. Hi, Rick, how you getting on? You know, it was that very strange thing. And Rick said, I said, yeah. He said, I've got to move. He said, I've got nowhere to live at the moment. He said, I'm looking for somewhere to live. And my wife at the time was an estate agent or a realtor, whatever you call it in America.
Yep.
So I said, well, she'll find you a house. So she went out and find a house, and I said, I'll tell you what, we'll pay the first 3 months rent if you'll agree to do an album with me. And that was the deal.
Oh wow, what a sweet deal. Nice.
So he said, oh, thanks ever so much. So that was the deal. Said, we'll pay your first 3 months rent, and if you'll agree to come make an album together.
That's
And
great.
the album was a lovely thing to make. It was such a joy.
Yeah, we've both listened to it. It's beautiful. That's great.
Yeah, and going back to Strawbs, John Ford and Blue Weaver were, of course, members of the band for those albums Grave New World and Bursting at the Seams. Ford had previously come back for more Strawbs work, including the previous album Settlement. But is the magic of it all the first time you two and Blue Weaver have worked together since that era in the 70s, at least in a Strawbs capacity? What was it like having the three of you together for this?
No. We all got together for our 50th anniversary, which we had in Lakewood, New Jersey,
Okay.
which we did. It now seems to be a sort of secret venue, a secret show. We had the 32-piece orchestra conducted by Tony Visconti. We had the United Nations singers singing with us.
Oh wow.
It was quite an event. It was a whole weekend. John Ford came along and played. Blue came along and played. I had 4 keyboard players on stage for the last set.
Wow. I hope they weren't all on the same side of the stage, or it would have tilted just from their egos, right?
They were all on the same side of the
Oh
stage.
wow.
Yeah, there was Dave Bainbridge, who played most recently on keyboards with us. There was Blue Weaver, there was John Hawkin, and Larry Fast.
Nice. That must have been quite a show. Is that on DVD anywhere?
No, unfortunately, the guitar player was so loud that he obliterated an awful lot of it, so it's having to be repaired.
Interesting bit of history. Didn't know about that.
Oh, but you know, Blue came back and played with us in the 1980s. John Ford came over and did shows with us. I hate to say it, but once a straw, you're always a straw.
There you go. Sounds like it. Yeah.
Yeah, and what would you say makes the magic of it all different from previous albums, in addition to what we've already talked about?
Sorry. I think it's the atmosphere, and there's a very Cape Town's a very lively place, and we were driven in. We got there at 10. We start working about 10:30, and we went on till 7 every night for 14 consecutive days. It was hard work, I don't mind telling you, but very enjoyable. But when we did drive around, driving in or driving out, the whole place has got a lively buzz about it. It's very friendly in that particular part of where we were. It was right up above the castle, looking out down on the castle. It's a very lively area. And we went up Long Street, down the Loop, as they call it. And there's music pouring out of every bar you go into. And the sound of South Africa is the Gumar rhythm, which is the Gumar Mango Groove was the band that one of the guitar player, Morris, played in. And so I refer to that in the song All Along the Bay on the album. But just listening to it, the atmosphere is so lively and so warm that we got a very warm live sound in the studio. And Blue Weaver, producing the album, decided to leave that feel on the album, not to overproduce it. You can kill albums off by putting too many overdubs on it, making it too busy, shoving too many pseudo orchestras on, on computerized orchestras and so on. He decided to leave it with a very raw live sound. So it was perfectly obvious that we were in the studio recording it live. The count-ins are all on there. And if there's a slight mistake, it's left in. And I think it gives that lovely feeling, a natural feeling to the album. And that's the difference of it. The album before it, Settlement, was made in the COVID lockdown, and not one of us was in contact physically with each other at all. In no way. Everything was everybody did their little bits on the computer, sent it to Blue Weaver in Germany, who chopped it all up and mixed it together. It was a very, very difficult album to make. It turned out all right, but it doesn't have the lovely live feel that this record's got.
How was the experience of your new album? And we're going to show a couple of the images there. Great photo, by the way. Is that you on the bike?
No.
You're not still riding, David?
No, I did have a motorbike in my youth, but I wouldn't dare get on one now. I've still got a license to ride a motorbike, but I wouldn't dare get on one.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I used to race motocross in desert when I was young, but I'm good for now.
You'd definitely fall off like I would.
Yeah.
No, I asked Richard, who is Marianne's, my partner's son, have you got I want a photograph of the sunrise or sunset in South Africa? And he came up with that photograph, which he'd taken several years before. It's a very beautiful photograph. The bike is almost in the water, and I think it's very evocative. And it's are we looking forward or are we looking back? Is the rider riding into the sunset, or is he riding into the sunrise?
Right.
You can't really tell. So maybe, well, I haven't finished the recording yet. I've said that I've got to make my last appearance on stage soon. That doesn't mean to say I'm not going to stop. I'm going to stop recording. Certainly not. I shall carry on recording. So I may do bits on the computer, but I found a little studio where I recorded the vocals when I got back from South Africa. I did some of the vocals in South Africa, but to finish it off, there's a little studio just 20 minutes away from my home here, and it's totally secluded. I can go in there. I can be separated from the musicians in one little cubicle, and the musicians could be in another part. So in terms of mixing with people, I can be totally separated, and that's how I can work in the future. So this is both a looking forward and a looking back album.
How is the music varying, if at all, from the last album, especially being that was done in lockdown and the process was completely alien to you compared to what you had ever done before?
Well, I started to write the songs, I suppose, about the turn of the year, the beginning of the year. I bought a new guitar. I went to Slovakia to buy it, and it's the most magnificent instrument. It's very, very powerful, beautiful sounding thing. But I put the guitar in different tunings all the time. I don't use the standard tuning at all. Hardly ever. In fact, on this album, there's just one song that's Stack Jaw Alice is in normal tuning. Other than that, everything else is in a different tuning.
Interesting.
So I'll put the drop D down, but I'll tune the guitar to all E's and B's so that there's an open E chord just ringing through. So all of that gives the Strawbs music a distinctive flavour. I know that other people use different tunings, but I don't think they use them quite to the extent that I do.
And sometimes not intentionally.
No, but I've been doing it ever since I started playing the banjo.
Oh,
And that goes back over 50 years. And the reason for that is I used to listen to old Appalachian music. And I found out that when you listen to that, that the banjo players tune the second string up half a tone to a C. And that's what gives the modal drone of of a lot of those old Appalachian tunes. I wish
interesting.
I can't remember the song now, but anyway. So I thought, that's interesting the way they do that, but I wonder what that would sound like on guitar. So I picked my guitar up, tuned the second string to C, and I thought, yeah, okay. And so I've got the top four strings, which are the same as a banjo. What do I do with the fifth and sixth strings? So I left the fifth string as it was, but I tuned the bass string down to D as well. I tuned the top string down to D. So I then had the top four strings of a banjo in modal tuning, the fifth string in an open A, and the bass string in D. And so I've got what I call dag-gad reversed. Dag-gad, you tune the second string down half a tone. I don't, I turn the second string up. And that is what gave the flavor of the opening track on the album, Ready, Are We Ready? And that is the modal sound of that particular track. And also,
Very interesting. Wow.
what makes that track very different as well is that it's in 7/8 time. It's not in straight 4/4. So you're counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3.
Oh, wow. So it alternates. Yeah.
Yes, and so what is coming in is you're coming in much earlier with the chorus, and so it adds an impetus to the lyrics. And if you'd done that in straight 4, it would have become dull.
Very
But
interesting. I
however,
love that concept.
We then messed about with it and then put the instrumental sections in 4/4, in 4/4, and then went back to the 7/8. So that track is in part 7/8, in parts 4/4.
Very interesting. I'm going to read a couple questions that came in from John Costello. John, thank you so much for tuning in and sending us a couple questions. He says, any chance, David, that you and Rick might do one more album together? He says Minnesota wants to know. And he also asks, any chance that the Strawbs could do a tour with Annie Haslam guesting on vocals to do the Sandy Denny era Strawbs material? For those who don't know, Sandy Denny, who was with Fairport Convention, also is the only guest voice that ever appeared on a Led Zeppelin album. She's the other voice on Battle Forevermore.
Also, well, Sandy Denny was our first and only girl singer.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about the 50th anniversary. Annie Haslam did sing with us, and we recreated those songs with Annie Haslam taking Sandy Denny's role.
Oh, wow.
And that is on the 50th anniversary concert.
Nice.
So that is waiting to come out. That's 3 years ago now. So we'll have to see. You've woken me up about that. When I got this Cropredy thing out of the way, this festival, I'll start working with Blue and Mus to get back to restoring that product. But so that is a possibility. You never know with Rick and myself. I haven't spoken to him face to face for a couple of years now. But if I phone him up and say, do you fancy doing a track on an album, he will always do it. There's no argument no problems with that whatsoever. We're still the best of friends, and I can only hope that we may do. I've said I'm giving up stage performance because that's a medical condition which is inhibiting that.
Yeah.
But recording, I can carry on and do as much as I want. And therefore the idea of doing an album with Rick, maybe I should give him a call.
That's great. Thank you again so much. And John says, I need to hear that concert. Yeah, definitely. I'm really curious. I would love to hear Annie with you guys. Yeah. We've had her on as well. She was great.
Oh, she's lovely. If you look on my Facebook page or Strawbs' Facebook page, you'll find a photograph of Annie and I together. It was only just
Great.
posted about a week or so ago.
Oh, nice. We'll check that
That was
out.
when we were rehearsing for the 50th. It was at her house.
Great. Steve?
Yeah. On the magic of it all, one of the so it's a great album overall. Like I really enjoyed listening to it. On the song "Everybody Means Something to Someone," the lyrics really resonated with me. When you say, "Think of all the friends you knew way back when. I bet you've lost touch with 9 out of 10. Just take a moment to send them a note. It's not what you say; it's the fact that you wrote." And I've made lots of friends through different schools I've gone to in the past, and even in this digital age, it's easy to lose touch with people. So sometimes one has to send something to maintain that connection, even if it's just a meme, just a funny picture. So I really resonated with the lyrics on that song.
It was written, I live just 5 minutes from the beach. And I walked past this old castle that Henry VIII built down to the beach, into the car park. And in the car park, leading down to the beach, there's a little row of fishermen's cottages. And outside one of them, there's a piece of driftwood that's been carved into the shape of a fish. And it was part of an old art exhibition from 3 or 4 years ago. And there's a tiny little plaque, no bigger than the CD here, like a little plaque like that. And I had to peer down to read it. And it said, everything means somebody to somewhere, sometime. And I thought, that's a nice sort of phrase. And I remembered it and came back with it. And I thought, there's an idea for a song there. Picked my guitar up. It was in an open E tuning. And I started to play it. And out came the sound of the waves of the sea, going from a D chord up to an E chord. But I also began to think about the fact that sea out there, it's washed away half of the castle. It shows you the power of the waves. But also there are many shipwrecks out there. It's a notorious area for shipwrecks. And so I thought about, it began to come to me, the idea that there was somebody who was the royalty had been shipwrecked out there and they were waving their caps as they passed away. And it was very, not romantic, but very evocative. And so, but then I began to think, this digital age of online, people have forgotten to pick up the phone. I don't phone anybody nowadays. I email them or, send them a message. And we've lost contact with people. We've lost, and I think we've lost an awful lot by not writing letters. I don't hardly ever write a letter nowadays. I delivered one to my doctor's practice today, but that's a different thing. But
Right.
you don't send a letter anymore. And my sister said to me, David, the words of that song, it made me want to write you a letter. And she said, I'm going to send you more notes in the future. And so she has been. And so I do hope that song will make people pick up the phone, maybe drop me a note, and I'll do the same back.
That's great.
And I just hope that I find it very evocative. And when I listen to it, especially with those a cappella vocals at the end, you listen to it 3 times, and I'm just spellbound by it myself. And there's me singing away, droning away, but I'm spellbound by just listening to it. And when the whole song comes on, it gets to the end, I go, phew, did I do that? It's very satisfying.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I'm going to read the track listing to everybody. Ready? Are we ready? In parentheses. Then we've got The Magic of It All Along the Bay, Everybody Means Something to Someone, Our World. Then number 6, The Time Has Come, and in parentheses, for Giving Back. Slack Jaw Alice, I love that title. Paris Nights, Wiser Now, The Lady of the Night, and Christmas Ghosts. Where does side 1 end and side 2 begin, David, on the vinyl version, if you don't mind giving it away?
Oh, yeah, of course. Side 1 ends with Everybody Means Something to Someone. and side two ends with Wiser Now.
Very cool.
So that's why I say the Wiser Now ends with a melancholy sound,
Yeah.
melancholy tone, whereas when you get the CD version, you'll hear that it ends with an upbeat, and so it's
Yeah.
got a totally different flavour. But that's how it's split, and it took 2 whole days with a spreadsheet with, and I digitise the timings, so 3 minutes 30 seconds becomes 3.50 minutes. So everything is digitized, and that way, when you swap a track over from one side to the other side, it's adding up and re-adding up the sides as you go along.
Yeah.
And you balance it. And then you think, oh, that's a minute out. That's if I pick that track out of there and put that there, yes, but the key doesn't work with that because that's two songs in the key of D together. Move that one up there. So it's all of that is going on. But it took 2 whole days of working just to get the running order right.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Back in the day when you first formed the Strawbs and you recorded your first couple albums, who were your influences growing up as a musician and at that point where you knew you could now go and record your own stuff? Who were your influences? Then I have a follow-up question to that.
Well, the first influence would have to be Rambling Jack Elliott, believe it or not. He came to play in the UK in Earl's Court, and as a schoolboy, I went up there and sat at his feet and sort of mesmerised by his flat picking and his guitar with a triangular sound hole. I've got exactly the same guitar, not that well, triangular sound hole Gretsch over there behind me.
Yeah.
Because I'll go and get it if you like and show you. But I was influenced by him. Now that's an interesting thing, is that I didn't the song Wiser Now. All of these songs tell stories. I don't just write lyrics. I love you, babe. I've loved you all my life. I don't do that.
Yeah.
I'm commentating on what's happening in my life, and I'm commentating on society as it's evolving around me. So there's the political side of Ready, which is like I'm what's an Old Testament prophet saying it's the end of the world with climate change, and there you get then to the time has come for giving back. The political differences and arguments are horrendous at the moment, and politicians are in it for themselves and not for the people they should be representing. And unfortunately, that's my view on it, and so I'll make it clear on the record.
Nice.
So I've lost track of where I was now. Oh, my influences, yes.
Yeah.
So from that, I went on to listening to a banjo, Earl Scruggs and Lester Flatt on a Newport Folk Festival album. And I thought, I want to play the banjo. So I bought a 5-string banjo. I had no idea what I was doing with it. And I listened to that and I thought, well, how the hell how does he do that? And I found out that my record player at the time had a half speed, 33 and a third. It went down to thirds. So I slowed the record down and I worked out what finger patterns Earl Scruggs was using. And so I learned to play bluegrass banjo by listening to Earl Scruggs at half speed.
Nice. That's not an easy instrument to pick up either when you haven't played guitar first, right?
Yeah, but I just did it.
That's great.
I worked out how to do it. In fact, I bumped in, it must be 20 years ago now. We were doing the Edmonton Folk Festival and Earl Scruggs was on the bill, and I was absolutely mesmerised seeing my hero actually there playing the Foggy Mountain Breakdown. It was wonderful. I was in the audience. And after the show, I went out to get a bus or back to the hotel. And there was Earl Scruggs standing on the waiting for his car to arrive to take him back to a hotel. And I went up to him and said, Mr. Scruggs, I'm one of your greatest friends from England. I learned to play the banjo by listening to you at half speed. And he looked at me in absolute astonishment and said, I'm going to Dublin next week. And then his car turned up, and that was the end of our conversation, unfortunately.
Oh, how funny. Have bands and other artists that your fans and other music fans might be familiar with have come to you and said how you and the Strawbs music have influenced their music?
Not that many bands, but the curious thing was people often say, you've turned up on a Def Leppard album. You're on the first Def Leppard album." I said, "Yes." But they said, "How does that come about?" It came about because the band actually split apart completely in 1980. And I went out and thought, well, I'll go around and play some folk clubs for a change. So I went round and went to Sheffield and played. And Joe Elliott and the guitar player used to come and literally sat at our feet. I was playing with a guitar player called Brian Willoughby, and they used to come and sit at our feet. And Joe was very proud when we went back to Sheffield and gave me the very first 45 that they made
Oh,
with
wow.
a sleeve. And I've still got it somewhere, and I can't find the blinking thing. But anyway, our producer at the time was Tom Allen, and when Def Leppard signed up, they chose Tom Allen as their producer. I went into the studio to visit Tom just to say hello one day, and they were putting down, and the walls came tumbling down.
Oh, wow.
And Joe was struggling with the poem he'd written at the beginning and said, "Hey, Dave, you blinking read it." So I went and read it, and the walls came tumbling down. And so I ended up on the opening track of the first Def Leppard album.
Wow, that's awesome. I hear your influence, and I know that comparisons are, subjective. Everything in art is, but I hear your influence very much on early Crosby, Stills, Nash type music, and that band specifically. I definitely hear that kind of folk influence on them. Have you ever heard that before? Has anyone ever said that, or have you ever made that
Yeah,
observation?
people have said that before, that we influenced them to an extent. People have said that the entire Styx catalogue was based on Strawbs.
Oh,
Not that
wow.
I'm
Oh wow.
that familiar with Styx, but I know that they listen to us.
Nice.
But don't forget that when we went over to play in America, our first shows we were booked for a week at the Whiskey A Go Go
Ah,
with Michael Murphy supporting us, the Texan singer,
yeah.
and uh, we were staying in the same hotel, the Continental Hyatt House, and on the top floor, Led Zeppelin was staying there. Now, it so happened that our managers were the agents for John Bonham and Robert Plant in the Band of Joy before
Oh,
Led Zeppelin.
yeah.
So we went up to say hello to them and met up with them. And it turned out that John Bonham's favourite song was one of my songs, Martin Luther King's Dream.
Oh, wow.
So they used to come down when they used to fly out to wherever they went to, from Los Angeles out to Dallas or somewhere like that to do a show, or maybe not that far, and then come back. We were doing shows about 11, 12 o'clock at night, or 11 o'clock at night was our second show, and the whole of Led Zeppelin to come and see us play.
Oh, how
The,
fantastic.
the audience were absolutely mesmerized by the fact that Zeppelin were there.
That's
Um,
really neat.
and so we got to know them. And so, but it was lovely. And John Bonham was such a nice man. We got on very, very well.
Nice. My biggest influence, by the way, my first and biggest influence. Yeah. They were my first concert that I ever saw.
Oh,
And one of those life-changing moments. I thought I was going to be the next Jacques Cousteau, but I saw Led Zeppelin and I said, "Oh, that could be a job, like being a professional musician."
yeah.
And that
One
changed
can.
everything. Yeah. Steve
Yeah.
has some comments to read, one that just came through and a couple from when we were promoting this episode. So Steve, why don't you go ahead and start with Joshua?
Okay.
Yeah, so Joshua VP says, any good memories about the recording of The Boy in the Sailor Suit album? Take care and looking forward to the documentary. So that's your solo album from 2007, right?
And Joshua's in Belgium, by the way.
Yeah.
Really? Lovely. Well, I wanted to do a song I moved down to the county of Kent, and went to the Battle of Britain Museum, because all around Kent was actually where, in the Second World War, was where the big battles were fought between Britain and the Germans. And there were Messerschmitts flying overhead, there were dogfights in the air, and all around there are aerodromes and wheat fields, and aerodromes together side by side. Wheat fields gently waving from an old wartime aerodrome is one line that comes back. And also I went into my local pub, and there are all these evocative postcards, sepia printed postcards of the area. And so I decided to write an album essentially about where I was living in the county of Kent. And so that was how the album came about. I didn't want to use a band on it. I used Chaz on it on bass, but I wanted to get away from that. I brought in a totally different band lineup. I brought in Miller Anderson on guitar, who had played with me on my very first solo album, 2 weeks last summer. Wonderful guitar player. And I brought in Chris Hunt on drums, and it was just an absolute joy to do. And I brought a fiddle player in, Ian Cutler, as well. And it was great fun. That was all put down live. But every album since then really essentially has been done not live in the studio. That was the last live album before this one here, the 2 weeks, 2 weeks, I might talk about the magic of it all. So the live feel comes across in that album. We called ourselves the Blue Angel Orchestra. It was a nice name to use. We went out and did a couple of shows, and that was it, I'm afraid. Too expensive to do.
Interesting. Thanks for the question, Joshua. And Steve, you have a couple that came in before the show when we were advertising it, right?
Yeah. So Paul Kevin Wiffen said, I actually played one gig with Strawbs in 1993 thanks to my friend Blue Weaver. Dave had been one of my main inspirations for choosing music as my career.
Wow.
Well, Paul did, and he organized a show. It was in Essex, and we went along and played it. And it was very funny because Blue organised for a Mellotron to come along, but he needed two different versions of the Mellotron racks. You know, they have racks of 3 different sounds.
Right.
One has strings, brass and woodwind on it, or another one will have choir, etc. And he wanted to use 2 different sounds. And Paul Wiffen organised halfway through the show. We did half of it with one rack with it, and Paul organised for the rack to be changed for the second half of the show.
Wow. That's got to be tricky.
Oh,
mid-show.
But Paul played lovely guitar, and we met up with him again in a music fair in Frankfurt, and it was lovely. And I keep seeing him popping up on my Facebook page, and it's lovely when he does. And we must meet up again, Paul, and have that nice, quiet little drink together again.
Yeah.
Very nice.
And Mike Tiano, friend of the show and past guest on the show, says, saw the Strawbs twice in the 1970s on 2 consecutive tours, both times opening for King Crimson, supporting their first 2 albums with Wetton and Bruford. Do you remember that?
I remember it very, very well. I always thought that they were the best shows we ever did with any bands. When we first started touring, we were touring with Carlos Santana and Joe Walsh. Then we toured with Billy Preston, believe it or not.
That
Wow.
A very strange lineup. But when we did with the shows with King Crimson, there was a similarity in that the bands they were more prog than we were, but we were determined to put on a show, and we were as friendly as anything. You know, there was no nastiness or rivalry. We were really good friends, but we were determined to go down as well as we could. So we put on one hell of a show to make it as hard as possible for them to follow that. And we got very well. Now, this is something I'll tell you, which is very hardly ever known, is that when we came back from those tours, Robert Fripp phoned me up and said, David, I'd like to go out and do a tour of folk clubs with you. I'd like to see how I think we could get on very well together, just the 2 of us.
Oh, wow.
So he said, come over to the house and we'll have a rehearsal. So I picked up my guitar, went over to his house, and we had a cup of tea first, and then he got his Spanish guitarist footstool out and had his Spanish guitar in his hand. I said, okay, what should we do? So I took my guitar in a tuning and played Ways and Means, and thinking, well, I better do something to give him something hard to play that's a bit, it's got a bit of complexity in it. At the end of it, he put his guitar down and said, do you know, I think you're self-sufficient. You don't need me.
Oh, what a neat story. Wow. And Steve,
I was so disappointed.
oh, that would have been fantastic. Wow.
It
Why
would have
don't you
been
ring
good.
him up again?
Well,
Maybe he's gotten better.
Well, yeah, he still plays quite well. But I'll probably be seeing him at that festival we're going to do in 3 weeks' time.
Yeah. Yeah, ring him up and ask if he's gotten a little bit more technically proficient since then, if he'd fancy doing it after all. That'd be wonderful. And Steve has, for our last question, Steve has a fun fact question for you.
Yeah, and before I read it, just a reminder that the magic of it all, the new Strawbs album is in stock on cherryred.co.uk. So this last question, what is your favorite fruit and what is your favorite vegetable?
Favorite fruit. I absolutely adore cherries. This time of the year is when the cherries is in the cherry season. You drive around the country lanes and you'll see lots of stalls with baskets of cherries. Unfortunately, it's pouring with rain, so you wouldn't see them today. But it's a lovely, lovely time of the year. My favourite vegetable, I have to say, is avocado pears. I absolutely adore avocados.
A healthy fat. I found out 4 years ago this month that I have diabetes, which came as a shock, and avocados are a great part of the diet if you're diabetic. And plus you could do so much with them, guacamole and slice
I
them.
know, they're just gorgeous.
Yeah. So I have something for you to try then, David. Now, this sounds like total stoner food, but I promise I was as straight as could be the first time I tried this. I halved an avocado, took out the pit. So I had the two halves with the empty pit hole on each side, and I filled it with creamy peanut butter, and it was awesome. The textures are almost the same, and somehow it went. I highly recommend. Two very healthy fats.
Well, I don't have peanut butter in stock, but I'll give it a go. I usually do just olive oil, and that does for me.
Yeah, yeah. I also like it with just a bit of, I like spicy foods. A bit of cayenne pepper sprinkled on it is good too.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, great. David Cousins of the Strawbs, thank you so much for joining us on Yesshift with Steve and I and sharing legendary stories about your legendary music from your legendary band. Brand new album out, folks. As Steve said, it's available on Cherry Records, right, Steve? Cherry Red Records.
cherryred.co.uk.
Yeah, there you go. Steve's got it. And folks, you can follow Yesshift on Facebook at facebook.com/Yesshift, youtube.com/@Yesshift, and on anchor.fm/Yesshift if you just want the audio version while you're walking the dog or on your treadmill or something. David, thanks again. Hang on the line after we say goodbye to the audience. And folks, thanks for following what we do.
It's been great fun doing it. I absolutely loved it, and I'll be only too happy to do it again.
Thank you very much. We'd love to have you. Thanks, everybody.